Oh, what's up? I didn't see you there. I'm currently trapped in the white promotional Apple void. I should be talking like Johnny Ive or something like, aluminium and iOS 7 is so not sophisticated and... In all seriousness though, the title of this video is not a lie or an exaggeration. I've been using this device for the past 4 to 5 months every day, so believe me when I say the M1 equipped MacBook Air is my favorite laptop of all time as of writing this video, which is the date. What's today's date? April 10th, maybe 11th at this point, 2021. The fact that this formerly x86 crippled thin and light machine is now turbocharged with an ARM processor makes me genuinely happy, giddy even. For $1,000 plus or minus some Benjamins, depending on how you spec one of these, I don't really think you can get anything better with every aspect considered, with the exception of one. In short, today I want to tell you why I think the M1 MacBook Pro is nearly 99% perfect or incredible, why most of you should consider buying it, and why some of you shouldn't. First up, the design. It's just refreshing. I know it came out in 2018 and could be a little more futuristic or industrial, but I think it's best in its class. And I know the design of this laptop is more than 10 years old, really, despite the fact that this was refreshed more recently, but I still am in love with the way it tapers towards where you open it, and the hinge when you open it is just deliciously smooth and consistent, you know, MacBook quality, if you will, pretty much expected at this point. And this thing is surprisingly light, even though every facet of it feels just rock solid. Nothing gives, nothing flexes, and I think this is thanks to its premium aluminum construction. The only plastic present is in the Magic Keyboard, which, by the way, as I've said before, is just excellent. This is my designated school laptop, and more often than not, I'm using it for all of my schoolwork, obviously. After endless hours of typing up papers, reports, assignments, presentations, and doing research, I can confidently say I have absolutely zero issues with this keyboard, completely unlike the butterfly variants that have come before it. There is also kind of obviously no touch bar implemented into this laptop, which is an absence I actually kind of prefer. I know some of you love this novelty MacBook Pro feature, and some of you envy people with it if you're rocking a Mac that lacks it, but believe me when I say this laptop is better off without it. I have gone over why I think the touch bar is kind of a gimmick in a separate video, my MacBook Pro review actually that I posted recently. I'll link that in the video description if you want to see that. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to make the argument that the touch bar is stupid because I think physical function keys just rock. They're fixed, meaning you don't have to, for example, look down to slide the volume or brightness bar up and down or left or right. And if you're worried about using emojis while commenting, emailing, and texting, all you gotta do is press the bottom left function key with the World Keyboards icon on it to toggle a pop-up emoji menu. The display, speakers, and trackpad are A1 as well, pretty much identical to the configuration you'd find in the more expensive MacBook Pro models, with the exception of display brightness. It's not the biggest deal, although I do wish the display in this laptop would get equally bright compared to its more expensive Pro brethren. Touch ID is another nifty feature too. Not exactly new or anything, but it's great for everything from initially unlocking or logging into your device to biometrically replacing your passwords. The Touch ID sensor also doubles as your power button, which reminds me of a feature that Air Force One demoed in a really sus way a couple months ago. When you press the power button to turn your Mac on or open it up like this, or just open it in general, it turns on instantly. In other words, these M1 Macs have something called Instant On. x86 Macs, including the previous Gen Air models, would always take a second or two to come back to life, even with really fast SSDs. But this thing, along with the other M1 Macs, is instant to do so. Though I take it for granted now, it's definitely an aspect of this laptop that makes it, once again, refreshing to use. It's simply snappy, but we'll touch more on performance later. Battery life is the next thing I want to talk about, and just recently I put it to the test when I was working on this final presentation with some classmates for a business composition course that I'm taking. Usually I'm plugged in when I work with my laptop opened or docked while hooked up to a 4K display that charges my MacBook Air as I use it. But on this particular day though, I had scheduled some car maintenance and oil change and a tire replacement to be specific, so I had to be sitting at my car's dealership for a few hours. While I was there, I put together a Google Slides presentation within Chrome from about 10:15 a.m. to 12:45 p.m., roughly 2.5 hours. Mind you, unlike Safari, Chrome is not the most power efficient or optimized browser for Apple Silicon. I'm pretty sure I had my unit cranked up to pretty high or max brightness as I used it as well. Long story short though, my battery drained from 100% to 80% in that time. In other words, 20% in about 2.5 hours with an unoptimized web browser running in the background. If my calculations are correct, Under those conditions, I would drain my Air's battery completely in about 12.5 to 13 hours. Super impressive if you ask me, way better than anything my 2019 MacBook Pro could have done, or even a last-gen Intel-equipped MacBook Air while running Chrome. Ultimately, this laptop really comes in clutch when you're away from the wall all day, and I figure that'll be my situation this fall. Hopefully, knock on wood, this is drywall by the way, just being illuminated and overexposed. I hope that I'm back in school this fall, and if and when I am, I will be lugging this, or not lugging, just lightly carrying this laptop around with its amazing battery life. The fact that I don't have to stress about it dying on my day-to-day like usage or like schoolwork schedule or whatever you want to call it is just so nice. As for performance, if you've watched M1 Mac content over the past couple months, you probably know that it's
astounding. It was beyond belief.
Okay, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but considering the fact that the M1 MacBook Airs completely beat out the Intel-equipped ones, the mid-2020 ones, which by the way, had fans, but of course thermally throttled to all living hell, maybe that movie clip that I referenced isn't an exaggeration after all. And this laptop is more than equipped to handle basic tasks like web surfing, my presentation making that I had mentioned, and other lighter stuff. It might even be fair to say it's overkill. My boyfriend, for one, just switched this laptop from a fully spec'd out 2017 MacBook Pro. Beyond more typical tasks, as a product design student, he works within creative apps like Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and XD to create UI mockups and presentations. He claims this laptop feels about 40 to 50% quicker while undertaking these more moderate to heavyish tasks compared to his i7 16GB MacBook Pro model he traded in. Oh, which reminds me, last year he bought his Intel MacBook Pro in August, I think, off of a friend for around $1,000, which was pretty reasonable at the time for what it was, you know, a 4-port i7 MacBook Pro with 16 gigs of RAM, but of course he didn't know, and I didn't know at the time, just how monumental the M1 Mac launch would be that November. He had been complaining about some performance issues, and for shits and giggles, he decided to see how much Apple would give him for his current laptop, or, you know, his previous laptop. To our utter surprise, with education pricing and with a trade-in, all he had to pay was around $150 with taxes for a brand new baseline MacBook Air, which by the way is the exact model I've been using. Totally worth it if you ask me. I would avoid selling your laptop online at all costs because eBay and Swappa, for example, take fees, and I've had shipping issues. Just, it's an overall horrible experience, and I would avoid it at all costs if you can. If you have a similar Intel Mac in decent condition, I'd recommend doing something similar. Sure, it'll cost you a bit now, but you'll have a much, much faster, longer lasting, more slowly depreciating device with a higher resale value. But Noah, what makes this laptop 99% incredible? Or better yet, if you remember more from my intro, why do I recommend it to most, but not all? Well, my friends, it all comes down to a fan, or the lack thereof. I've mentioned this before, but I want to re-emphasize this point in this long-term review that we're doing here, I guess. While this laptop packs the very same M1 chip found in the MacBook Pro and Mac Mini, minus a GPU core in some cases, it is passively cooled, not actively cooled. This is fine for light to moderate tasks, and yes, you can still push this laptop to smoothly edit or render 4K video, to name a heavier task, but if you're pushing your device in this way all the time for your work, let's just say, a fan really does come in handy. In some testing I performed last year, I determined that the MacBook Air does indeed still thermal throttle. Not horrifically though, not like Intel level or x86 level, not enough to cripple this device, but enough to differentiate it from its more expensive Pro brethren. I'd argue this laptop is pretty much perfect for everyone, with the exception of creative professionals like myself. Photographers could absolutely get away with using this laptop. The same thing goes for creative enthusiasts and others in situations where time doesn't exactly equal money. But again, if you're shooting weddings, promotional clips, and more at 4K or higher, or doing any sort of like really intensive tasks or rendering, you're gonna wanna settle for a Mac Mini or a MacBook Pro with 16 gigabytes, I might add, or something newer and bigger and better in the future because of their adequate internal cooling capabilities. Still though, for its class, the M1 MacBook Air, even in its baseline configuration, is an absolute beast, and it has a very special place in my tech heart. Like I said at the beginning of this video, it's my favorite laptop as of right now, April 2020, and I wish it could be my one and only. But thankfully for most, it can be exactly that. And that about wraps things up here. I hope this video was helpful and high quality. Maybe one day I'll leave the Apple void here if I am lucky enough to escape. I'd appreciate it if you leave a like, comment, and of course subscribe for more content like this. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.